I think this verse that I'm going to show you today is pretty insightful into the culture that we have today, and especially the placement that this verse is in. And it comes from the last chapter and the last verse of the book of Judges. And I have definitely spoken on themes that are found in this verse. And the reason why I wanted to speak on this verse is because this verse is even common, if not more common, to this society that we face today. Of course, during this time, Israel faced a lack of leadership. And in that lack of leadership, they started to worship their own gods. They started to go to the other gods that other nations had because they thought those gods were more appealing. And so, because of that, Israel decided to sin against God. But because they sinned against God, God would send a nation to attack them. And so Israel would ask for forgiveness from God, they would realize their sin, and then turn back to God. But then a little while after, Israel would continue that cycle and they would go back into sin. And so, what God does in His sovereign grace and mercy is that He sends people called judges, people who are chosen, set apart as holy by God to go to and sort of be like a leader to Israel in order to lead them into not sinning, leading them out of that sin cycle that they were in. But the problem of picking judges like human beings like us is because we are fallible human beings, meaning that we make mistakes and we sin. We are not perfect. And you see that throughout the text. The judges, starting in the first couple of chapters, are really good so far. They do well, they follow the commands of God, they instruct Israel to do that. But then when you go towards the end, especially when you see Samson later on throughout, it starts in Judges 13 and goes throughout, the judges system starts to deteriorate a little bit more and more and more because now the judges are turning into what Israel was turning into. And now they are also becoming the problem that God was trying to fix. And so, usually, when we read books or stories, there's always a moral or a theme or a lesson to be learned at the end of the story. And usually, it's something good, like, maybe it ends with happily ever after. But this book ends with something really dark, and it points to how dark we are as human beings. And in verse 25, this is what the writer of Judges notes. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. It's interesting to note that the writer ends off the book of Judges with this truth, this hidden truth that we see, that there was no king in Israel and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. It is like the writer of Judges was describing the state of Israel at that time. And not only that is the state of Israel, that is pointing more towards the state that we are turning into today. The fact that there was no king in Israel is pointing to the fact that Israel had, of course, no king. They were 12 tribes kind of loosely packed together. And the only really kind of leaders they had, and they weren't even kings, were Moses and Joshua. And then you have the judges system, which in the end didn't really work out in the end. Moses, of course, would strike the rock in Numbers and would disobey God's commands. These judges throughout the book would follow in their own ways, in their own passions, and still not worship God. I mean, Samson being kind of the prime example in this book, the strongest man in the Bible to be described, and is taken over by even his own lusts. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. The writer of Judges is pointing to the problem of the generation. The problem is that we are trying to do what we want to do. Instead of having God rule over us and having God be the leader, we want to be leaders ourselves. We want to rule by ourselves. We do not want God. We are, in a way, trying to push God out every single time. It has been clear, even in Genesis chapter 3, in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve is literally pushing God out, trying to push God out, even though they were told by God, don't eat the fruit. What do? They eat the fruit. When God gives us a clear command to do something or to not do something, what do? We do the exact opposite because we hate following God's commands. And I know that you and I can point to places in our life where we have hated following God's commands, even though it is the easy path, even though God says it is the simple path to go. Time and time again, we have disobeyed God over and over. And time again, moreover, God has continued to chase us with his loving kindness. And so the issue that we see today, that we've seen that ancient Israel went through, is that because they followed in their own ways, this is what led to their downfall. Of course, when there is no king in Israel, this was pointing to the book of Samuel, where Israel would desire for a king. And the same problem exists there, that the kings did not follow God's commands. What do we need in this society? What is the solution? The solution is to repent and turn back to God. That has always been the clear command and the clear solution, yet we cannot do it well. Let this be a wake-up call for all of our lives to continue to pursue after God and his own commands. Let us not take after the example of what the judges or the kings did wickedly by not following the commandments of God, because in the end, all of them perished, but God is still in the heavens and he does whatever he pleases. I hope this video blessed you. On that note, take care and God bless.